lovelies, welcome back to my channel. So in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to cut and sew a flounce for the front of a skirt. So here I'm going to be using this as an illustration for the skirt block. So what you need to consider first is the length of where you want the flounce to fall. Then the next thing to consider is the length at which you want to cut the side seam of your flounce. Then also the waist length where you want your flounce to stay. So here I'm going to be combining two fabrics here, and I'm going to be placing it right side to each other. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to take note of the side seam where I want my flounce to fall. By the way, this is going to still have a waistband, and I want my flounce to fall around the hip line. So I'm going to be measuring the measurement of the side seam plus 4 inches. I want my flounce to be 8 inches long by the side seam, and I'm going to add 4 inches to it, and that is 12 inches I'm marking here. Next, I'm going to be marking the difference between the hip line and the waistline. That's if your hip is 10 inches, that's a quarter of your hip is 10 inches, and the waist is 8 inches, you're going to be marking 2 inches. So I'm just going to be marking the difference at this point. The next thing to do now is to use my ruler to connect that difference down to the other point, like so. When I'm done doing that, the next thing I'm going to do here is to mark the length of the front side on the waistline where I want the flounce to sit, minus 1 inch. I'm just going to be minusing 1 inch from that measurement, and from there I'm going to connect this line. Then in the mid part of this line you just made now, you're going to be keeping your tape on it, and you're going to measure down 1 inch here, and you're going to make a curved line. And by doing this, you are equally adding the 1 inch you removed already, just that you're going to place it in a flare format. So from here down, you're going to be measuring 12 inches, as much as you measured for the length of your flounce here, and you elongate this line. And here on this line, you're going to be measuring the breadth of your flounce. Like I want my own to be 8 inches. You can measure 7 or 8 inches, any one you wish to, or even more. So I'm going to be measuring 8 inches here. Remember that we added 4 inches to the length of our breadth of our flounce, so don't measure more than that if you're using 12 inches by that side. So you're going to connect this to that, like so. So the next thing we are going to consider now is to measure the length where we want our flounce to be from here to here. So in my case it's 23 inches. So I'm going to measure what I have already here, and then I'm going to use a freehand curve to make my further curve. Remember, the curvier it is, the more rounder your flounce will be. So I'm just going to measure from here. I'm not going to measure anything. I'm just going to use my free hand to make a curve like so. This is not really a good one, but I'm going to be modifying it later on. So here you're going to measure what you have here to see if it has reached up to the length you desire to get. So in this case I still have like 20 inches here, so I'm further going to take it up more, as you can see, and I think this should be okay for my flounce length. So what I'm going to do now is to curve with freehand from there also to this point, as you can see me doing. As I'm coming closer to the length of my flounce, is becoming bigger. So as you can see what I'm doing here, I'm just using a free hand to curve this. And when I get to this point, the next thing I'm going to be working on is on the other side here. I'm just going to remove that 4 inches we added, like so, and I'm going to curve this to this point. You see, now our flounce is ready. I'm just going to cut this out. So as you can see, I've cut out my flounce. As you can see, the whole thing is now cut out. The next thing I'm going to do now here is to stitch close the mouth of my flounce from this point up to this point, leaving the rest open. So when I'm done sewing it together, I should have something like this, as you can see here. And I've also notched these areas as well to reduce frown lines when I turn it inside out, and that's what I'm going to do now. So here I've turned it inside out. The next thing I did also here was to stitch close the mouth of my flounce, as you can see here. So the next thing I'm going to do is to put it on my skirt block and show you how it sits. So I'm just going to move this closer so you see what I'm doing. I'm going to start off with the waistline. By the way, I've also marked out my seam allowances so I know where my flounce should fall here. So also here, as you can see, I've sewn in the waistline also, and make sure when you're sewing the side seam, the flounce falls into the seam allowance so that when you stitch close the side seam, you stitch close this rough area. Now the next thing for me to do now is to sew on this length of my flounce. As you can see, I'm arranging it properly, and when I'm done arranging it like so, I'm just going to stitch this area close. And a quick tip on sewing this is that when you get to the tip and you see the flounce is longer, what you just simply need to do is to cut out a few inches where it's longer like so, and then you continue your stitching together. Now as you can see, I've joined the other side of the skirt also, and I'm going to join the other block, and my skirt is ready. Thank you guys for watching. I hope I'll see you guys in my next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Bye.